Look what I just got here.
The Bank of England has released some analytical papers about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And I didn't read the whole papers, just kind of got the gist of it based on some news articles. Basically, they really understand the underlying technology. I think they've done a better job than anyone in the American government, or the Fed for that matter, on understanding what actually makes the blockchain work and how the decentralized ledger works. And the Bank of England seems to be pretty supportive of this, of the blockchain as a potentially revolutionary financial construct. But there's other parts where they're skeptical as well. Like, apparently they realize that they can't really control, the financial inflation and things like that through the blockchain. So they took a very rational, like practical approach to it, and they released a video on YouTube talking about it. A scripted video, mind you, but an informational video nonetheless. And I thought it was surprising. I thought it was surprising that the Bank of England, number one, understands it pretty well, and number two, isn't totally hostile towards it. Because the Bank of England, it's basically the equivalent of the Fed in the United States, right? They control the
Yeah,
money
they control.
supply.
Yeah, the Bank of England controls the monetary policy of England, just like the Fed does in the United States, and it's because they're not part of the monetary part of the European Union. If they were, they'd be controlled by the European Central Bank.
Mm, okay.
So
And the
y-
European Central Bank has been hostile towards Bitcoin before, right?
yeah, the some like some European Union authority. It's called the European Banking Authority, is what it was called.
Mm.
They released a report saying that if you're considering accepting Bitcoin, don't do it, and if you're accepting Bitcoin right now, stop it because we haven't passed any laws on Bitcoin yet. So
But the Bank of England likes it. They understand it. They understand that it could be world changing. Could be a huge shift in the finance industry. And wow,
yeah,
Did you read the
I
report?
I haven't read the report. I read the CoinDesk article. I usually read reports like that, but I just didn't have the time to read this one. But what I got from the CoinDesk article is they pretty much said the same thing as the OCED report did back in the summer.
Mm.
They're like, oh yeah, it's this great technology. It's really interesting. Revolutionizes payments, but ultimately it can't be a real currency because it's unsafe. There's no regulation. The value's too volatile, et cetera, et cetera. But we could separate Bitcoin from the blockchain and then use the blockchain for um, our fiat currency.
Yeah.
Uh, that's what I got from it from reading the CoinDesk article. But then again, there's all kinds of um, biases and straw man arguments that could have been in that article. So I can't really say anything either way about it until I read the actual report from the bank itself.
Yeah, they talk about like hypothetical situations in the paper. I'm looking at the CoinDesk article right now. Like in a scenario in which the UK economy becomes, in the Bank of England's words, Bitcoinized, the central bank's chief monetary authorities would become increasingly unable to influence prices and economic activity as a whole. Yeah, good assessment. good good friggin' assessment. Like they get it. They basically get it. They understand what's going on. They look at this and they're like, this is huge. This could basically render us obsolete. This could render the government's financial initiatives, ineffective. Uh, can't influence prices. Can't influence the economic activity anymore, which has been the domain of governments since the beginning of governments, basically. Uh, now,
Central banking, at least.
yeah. Now, will this kind of sentiment spread to like people in the United States? Like there must be people in the United States government who have read this report and they're like, wow, England makes some good points. I wonder if that could happen in America as well, because America, Jesus, they influence the economic activity um, in practically everything to a huge extent. It's really kind of scary. The more I've learned about this whole thing in the past like 5 years since the banking crisis happened. Um, but yeah, like do you think that this kind of like truthful assessment of what Bitcoin actually is, could that sentiment spread to other governments?
Well, the Federal Reserve has already had two hearings about Bitcoin, and they were, surprisingly um, positive, if you could say that. Like they didn't say it needed to be banned or anything. They were like, oh, it's a really interesting technology, it can do a lot of good things. It's just probably never ever going to become a currency because we can't control it.
Hmm.
So, um, I mean, yeah, the Bank of England's paper. Like I said, I haven't actually read it, so I can't really talk about whether or not it was, overall positive or negative. But what it sounds like is that they're just saying the same things other central banks have already said. The ones who haven't been like, let's ban it, right
Yeah,
now. But
yeah,
because like, oh yeah, it's an interesting technology. It could be dangerous because we can't control it, but it probably will never become a currency. That's what I take from reading the article and hearing what you had to say about it. That's pretty much what the Federal Reserve has already said about it.
yeah,
I don't think we have to worry so much about the central banks as we do like legislatures and like Congress and Parliament and the IRS and whatever the other countries' equivalents of the IRS are, because those are the ones that like seriously stand to lose something uh, because of Bitcoin. It could cut off their funding. So those are the ones who are going to be really aggressively against it. Not maybe not so much the central banks. Like they probably will be. Like if it ever takes full hold of the economy, if Bitcoin does, and central banks become irrelevant,
hmm,
then they might start getting a little hostile towards it. But right now, I don't think central banks really have to worry about them because they still have their monopolies over currency, so they don't really feel threatened about Bitcoin.
yeah. It's just interesting, like how far we've come. So many changes are happening so quickly in this space, week to week, that we kind of forget, like, the point that we were at just a year ago when uh, even a year ago, people were wondering if the United States was still going to ban Bitcoin. None of the hearings had happened yet in the Senate for FinCEN or anything like that. And now we have the Fed basically saying that it could become money in the future. Bank of England saying it could become money in the future. It's an actual innovation in technology, combines technology with currency and finance and computer science and all that. And like, we're actually getting acknowledgments now from like huge, gigantic institutions who are looking at this and saying, wow, maybe there is something to this thing that, you know, this super dedicated community has been talking about for years already. And, you know, they're not just a bunch of crazy people. There's something actually legit and financially innovative going on here. So that's huge, a huge development in terms of awareness, in government, you know?
It's definitely a sign that Bitcoin is kind of expanding beyond, you know, the depths of the internet, that dark corner that nobody likes to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, everyday people are starting to hear about Bitcoin. Uh, like, well, for example, yesterday I was watching Fox Business, and I don't even know what they're talking about because I wasn't really paying attention to it, but they were talking about like the state of the economy or something, and
Yeah.
and this one guy who's part of like the roundtable discussion, he was like, well, yeah, it's getting a lot harder it would be a lot harder for a government to do that in a Bitcoin economy, and I was just like, wait, what? Did somebody on Fox News really just say that?
Wow.
And it's definitely leaving like this little niche community where it started, and it's expanding um you know, moving on to bigger and better things, and people are taking notice of it. So, you know, it's pretty exciting.